So Piers Morgan of Piers Morgan Uncensored recently had Candace Owens on the Piers Morgan Uncensored show to talk about what you may be wondering. Well, to talk about the defamation lawsuit that the Macrons are bringing towards Candy Owens. I saw a post yesterday saying that they had retracted it. That turned out not to be true. They're still going ahead with it. But why people are continuously talking about this, whether or not Brigitte Macron was born a man, I don't know. This seems to be like a major thing in the news nowadays. And Piers Morgan, as we know, the grifter, clickbait, extravagant, I guess you could say, and provocateur galore with the likes of Candy Owens. Like, he has Candace Owens on because she brings views. That's what he does. You know, he's a showman. And if you can say the most provocative thing ever, you can get away with a great deal of clicks. It's what the algorithm wants of you. You got these days with this particular style of YouTube show, you got to be as provocative as you possibly can. So saying provocative things like Brigitte Macron is a man and having a series, like 6-part series or whatever else, that is obviously going to get people going, oh, whoa. Even though there's no substantial evidence at all, it's based around one journalist only, his reporting, and also a book that he wrote. So that's also very interesting because I can make claims about Candy Owens being a man. Doesn't mean that it's true, but I can make the same claims. And it's quite interesting because this sort of interaction, Piers believes that Brigitte Macron is a woman, born a woman. Candy thinks that, well, Brigitte was born a man, but then gave Brigitte's identity. The whole thing is just, it constantly changes. And I'm going, there's much more important things out there in the world to really care about than whether or not the French president's wife is not actually his wife. I don't know. Like, I think the real story happens to be whether or not Brigitte Macron groomed a 14-year-old boy. But hey, I guess we're going to have to wait and see. But anyway, Piers Morgan says this to Candace Owens. Apparently, she's been hoodwinked by a journalist. Have a watch.
Candace, let me present another series of explanations for what's happened here. Sure. I believe, and maybe I'm wrong, all right? So let me put that caveat at the start here. Maybe you're right, okay? I don't think you are. I think you've been hoodwinked by these journalists who have gone on a complete fantasy trail of nonsense, trying to suggest Brigitte Macron never had 3 children, is a man, it's all a lie, and all the stuff that you've been doing on your channel and getting huge traffic for and making tons of money. So if you're right, it's been a magnificent display of fearless journalism exposing a bombshell revelation about the First Lady of France. I absolutely make no bones about that whatsoever. But if you're wrong, as I believe, I genuinely believe you're wrong, then it leaves 2 avenues of explanation for why you would pursue this so aggressively. One, you've been duped by these French journalists. And secondly, worse, that you kind of know it's not true, but you've ridden the wave of conspiracy theory about it because it's been so lucrative and it's gone around the world, like you've been saying. And I think that is why they're suing you, because ultimately they know that you've been amplifying this massively more than the journalists had in France, getting way more global traction. And it boils down to one simple fact, not photographs, as you keep trying to distract me with, but a test. If on day one of this case, she just produces an actual test report that says she's a woman, you're going to realize in that moment you've been completely duped. What do you do then?
Piers, I'm not concerned about it because, like I said, it's been about 10 years and Brigitte could have done that at any moment. She's been in multiple lawsuits, involved in lawsuits, trying to shut journalists up. I mean, you really are asking people to defy their common sense in this moment. They know what has happened here. They know that we went to Brigitte before we started this series to get Brigitte's side of this. We were in contact with Brigitte's lawyers, the same ones that filed this case. We asked simple yes or no questions. We were not requiring a blood test. We were asking, can you confirm this is you in this photo from the childhood that has been produced, ironically, by a woman who was charged for forging documents. That woman's name is Mimi Marchand, and she was the first couple's PR person until she got in too much trouble for being a gangster and forging documents. They refused and declined to answer those questions. So, like I said, you are asking people at home to suspend their common sense and to truly believe that rather than answering yes or no questions, rather than maybe at first going after the author of the book, Xavier Poussard, who is a Frenchman, for defamation, that would be the first thing. Why don't you launch, at least at the same time, both of these suits? I'm going to go after Candace and Xavier Poussard. They are instead only going after me for defamation and not the person who sourced this entire quote unquote rumor.
So there you have it, right? So Piers Morgan says to Candy, well, you could be right. This could be like a pretty impressive journalistic story that you've, produced, even though you've just amplified what another journalist has done. And Candace is just going, well, they could have sued the journalist that wrote the book about this. But that's the thing. When the journalist wrote the book and published the book, I don't think that many people cared about it. I don't even think Brigitte Macron cared about it too much. It's when you amplify the message like Candace did. It could be a total and utter lie. Why is it that only one journalist wrote a book about it? Why has only maybe one or two journalists ended up in lawsuits? And why are they in lawsuits in the first place? Yes, Brigitte Macron hasn't actually sued the original culprit, the original journalist, for defamation, but she sued other journalists for other things, for amplifying this story. That, I think, makes a huge difference. If Brigitte Macron were to go after Xavier, the original journalist, for writing up this story, for, making up stuff, then I think it would change things a little bit. I don't know if it really will, but who knows? Candace could be right. She's probably going to be wrong. Same with, I honestly think the level of proportionality of this story is nuts. I really do. Now, she's going, you're asking people to remove their common sense out of the equation. No, it's like me saying Candace Owens is a man and basically going, well, it's photographs, it's stories, it's witness testimony. If you read the defamation lawsuit that was brought against Candace Owens, lots of lawyers have read it and have come back saying that Candace is screwed. But Candace doesn't care about that. She doesn't care whether or not she's wrong. But wouldn't that just prove that you are a massive liar? Right? Anyway, there's a moment that Piers Morgan asked Candace Owens whether or not she's a woman. Have a watch.
Are you a woman?
I am, in fact, a woman, and I certainly would never sue someone to prove to the world that that is a fact. I would probably be laughing.
Well, how can you prove to me you're a woman if I don't believe you?
I wouldn't have to. You could do 18 hours of a show saying that I was living as a man for 30 years. And the easiest thing for me to do, obviously, would be to just release pictures of me living, yearbooks, me on the cheerleading team, me pregnant, me with my children, raising my children, long before, if I ever got to the point where I thought that I needed to launch a lawsuit, I would probably just release a few photos if we're playing devil's advocate here.
But ultimately, the easiest and quickest and best way to prove to me that you're a woman, and I'm not disputing that you're a woman, I think you probably are. I know you like to cast doubt on people's gender and sexuality. So I'll just leave it floating, hoping that someone in the internet world grabs it and makes me tons of money with a, is Candace male or female? But my point is this, you would be able to prove it to me by taking a simple sex test, right? You would just say, here we are, here are the results, here's the sex test. That's the best way to do this, right?
Actually, because we were in communication with her legal team long before she launched this website, we never asked for something that deep. We literally gave her a list of 21 yes or no questions and asked her to just answer it on the record. Also offered to fly over to Paris and interview Brigitte to get her side of the story. Before we even launched the first episode of the Becoming Brigitte series, we were in communication and offered them a chance to rebut. And they came back and said, we don't have to submit anything to prove that she is a woman, and we don't want to answer your questions. I've published those legal letters. It's the reason why people that watch this series are just not believing the media when they pretend that this was like, oh, Candace wanted the blood of the first lady. No. Also, she's not suing. Obviously, my series was based on a book entitled Becoming Brigitte that I did alongside the journalist who worked on this story for 10 years. She's not suing him for defamation, but she is suing him for cyberbullying, which is really, if you read through the lawsuit against me, they are misrepresenting the things that I've said, taking them out of context, and pretty much smearing me in the process by pretending that we asked something extraordinary by saying we won't run this entire series if you can just show us a few photos of you living in this 30-year period.
It's like, okay, Brigitte doesn't have to provide Candace Owens with anything. It's Brigitte Macron's private life that Candace Owens has gone after. Granted, Brigitte Macron is quite popular in France, etc., etc. It's like, as Piers alluded to, I think you're probably a woman. I don't officially know that you're a woman, Candace Owens, but I could make a entire series about whether or not Candace Owens is a man or a woman. And Candace just brings up the same kind of evidence that Brigitte Macron has done, or tried to prove that Brigitte Macron is a man. It's photographs. And Candace is going, oh, I can provide photographs, yearbooks, that sort of stuff, long before I get to a lawsuit, right? That would prove that I am a woman. Okay, I could do the exact same thing. So it's kind of like her level of argument isn't really an argument. And Piers is right. So wouldn't you, to just get rid of all reasonable doubt whatsoever, just provide a sex test? I think that would just abolish. Now, again, Candace and Brigitte Macron, they don't have to do it. But it seems as if Candace is like forcing Brigitte Macron to do it. It'd be like Piers Morgan forcing Candace Owens to produce a sex test that Candace is a woman. Photos don't just do it justice, right? Like, show us whether or not you are truly a woman. And I love how Piers goes, probably a woman, cast doubt. And someone will just go online and say, Candace is probably a man or a woman. Yeah, well, probably. Who knows? But Ant of Ant Speaks goes, I hate that Piers will be all smug about this, but at least Candace's epic failure will make it worth it. That said, given her net worth and the fact that she's married to a millionaire, it's not exactly going to hurt her financially. Yeah, it probably won't hurt her at all in terms of reputation, because she's got millions of people that follow her. At the very least, it make her look like a fool and an idiot, which is something, I guess. And Piers decided to put $350,000 behind this as a bet. So I wonder if we're ever going to know. I really do wonder. But in saying that, I think Candace has done something that, same with Piers Morgan, they're very good at it. Let's bring the most provocative, dramatic thing we possibly can think of to the forefront of society, and let's go along with that. So anyway, that's enough from me. You guys take care, be blessed, and I'll see you all in the next video.